Hello and welcome to Joy in Our Town. I'm Sherry Duckworth, and joining me today is Mr. Jeff McKissick, speaker and instructor for Defense by Design. Thanks for coming back and talking with us, Jeff.
Sherry, always a pleasure.
Now, Defense by Design, tell us a little bit about what you do and how you got involved in this particular field.
Well, the best way I can describe what I do is when people say, and I meet them in mixers and parties and events, and they say, what exactly do you do for a living? My typical response is, I teach you how to spot trouble before trouble spots you. And so really what this encompasses is the areas of profiling, threat assessment, and personal safety and defense. How I got started really was in this room some 24, 25 years ago. It was in July of 1987. Hal Lindsey was sitting in that chair. A man named Ken Wooden was sitting in this chair for the National Praise the Lord show. And they did a 2-hour special they ended up getting a Dove Award for. And it was that program that caused me to reach out to Ken Wooden. I connected with him. He was the founder of a program called Child Lures. And we just hit it off. And for the next 6 to 8 years, he was my mentor. I spoke to some 250,000 elementary, junior high, and high school students with the Child Lures program over the years. And then back about 6, 7 years ago, I founded Defense by Design, taking what I really had been dealing with on the child level and dealing now with the adult level. So now I go into mostly companies, corporations, churches, nonprofits, institutions, teaching adults really the things that many of us missed as lessons when we were kids. Or because we think we're older and we think we're smarter, we've kind of put them on the shelf or forgotten them. But the reality is, we all still need to be reminded of the same things as our children.
It's very true. It's very good, especially when we feel safe in a particular environment.
Right.
We tend to, put our guard down. And as adults, we think, again, I'm not a child, I'm an adult, I'm safer because of that. Mm-hmm. So all of these mistruths, I guess, that we believe, lies that we believe about our own safety. So it's great that you do what you do to educate us and help us to make ourselves safer.
I had a lady a while back, and I think she had one of the greatest remarks. She came up and she said, you know what you really do? I said, what? She said, you just basically are that tap on our shoulder, remind us what we already know.
Yeah.
I went, that really is kind of true. So I'm happy to do it, and I've been doing it for 24, almost 25 years now, and I absolutely love what I do.
Now, would you say that women are really the ones that are mostly concerned about defense of themselves, and do you work with a lot of women?
Oh, I've worked with a lot of women. I make the point, though, and I think it's a point that should be made, that men and women alike are equally vulnerable. It's just that women are targeted more often. But I don't let the guys off the hook. There was a case just about a year or so ago of a man who was caught in the Atlanta airport who had lured 25 men, 5 of them to their deaths over 3 states before being caught. And his simple lure was he walked up to these men in parking lots and parking garages and said, hey, my car's died on me. I have the cables. I just need a jump. Can you come help me? And the men didn't pay attention to where the car was parked. It was always behind something, somewhere, etc. So they went around thinking they were going to be a good Samaritan. The man pulled a knife, random acts of violence, no robbery, no theft involved, and started stabbing. 5 dead, 20 wounded over 3 states. So again, it just speaks to the fact that men and women alike are equally vulnerable, but absolutely women are targeted more often.
Would you say that women are targeted in their homes more? Is that...
Well, in the home, absolutely. Women would be targeted more in the home than, say, a man would. And yes, and there are various types of ways that women can be targeted in the home. Some of them are the more obvious, where there could be a break-in-entering situation, a mugger, a rapist, etc. And some are more insidious, where the very person we thought we could trust and invite into our home becomes the source of the assault.
Now, as a woman myself, I always am very nervous whenever I know that, the cable provider's coming over, they're sending a tech out, or if somebody's going to come check, a gas leak or plumbing or something that has to be done in my house. How do I know to let them in? How do I know that they're going to be safe, that I'm going to be safe? When I was younger and first got married, I used to always have my father-in-law come to the house because I was too nervous.
Yeah, well, that's not a bad idea.
Too nervous to have anyone come over to the house to, to fix the cable. I didn't feel safe.
Right.
So, do we have to go to that extreme and invite someone over, or how do we know that we're safe?
And that would be ideal, but it's simply not practical for the vast majority of people out there.
Exactly.
Especially
I was lucky.
Work schedules. Yeah, you were, actually. But the strategy you used was a very sound one and a very responsible one. So I don't want to say that someone's being paranoid or so-and-so, because I think people confuse paranoia with just good instincts. And so many times, you have that feeling something, someone, somewhere isn't right, and you mention it to a trusted friend, family, coworker, and while they say, "Oh, Sherry, you're just being silly. Sherry, it's just your imagination. Sherry, you're just being paranoid."
Right.
When it's not paranoia, it's not the fact that you're being overly cautious. It's your instinct telling you something that just the cognizant mind is saying, "Oh, that's fine," but your instincts say, "No, it's not fine." It's doing the advanced math. But in the situations of in the home, yes, there is a valid reason to be concerned. I have a very, very dear friend here in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. Her sister was in Florida. She had bought an air conditioning system of a very well-known national chain. And when she called later to have that air conditioning service for repair, they were too busy, so they subcontracted another company. The company they subcontracted did not do background checks on their people. The man they sent into her home was out on probation for 3 cases of aggravated sexual assault.
Oh, my goodness.
Now, on that trip, he did nothing. But 6 months later, that man returned to her home, beat her, raped her, murdered her, tried to burn down the house to destroy the DNA evidence.
Oh, my gosh.
Now, they did catch the man because there was DNA evidence. The neighbors saw it. They called the fire department, and they got enough from the crime scene to identify him as the perpetrator. But what a tragedy. Over someone at that corporate office who was so irresponsible to subcontract someone who didn't do the proper due diligence to make sure that the people they were sending to the home were safe.
What a horrible tragedy that could have been prevented.
Absolutely, and that's the worst part of it, is how easily that whole thing could have been prevented, but it wasn't. So is there a cause for concern? Absolutely, which means that people like yourself, especially ladies in the home, whether it's a husband or a boyfriend or father calling for service when he's not there and the wife, the girlfriend, the teenage daughter, etc. are alone, or the lady calling for the service on behalf of herself or her children in the home. There is cause for concern, but there are strategies that you can employ to better make sure that you are safe in this process as well.
So when this happens, we have a service provider coming out. What are things that we need to do to prepare? And are there any warning signs if things don't quite feel or look right that we need to watch out for?
Yeah, and that's a kind of an A-B kind of question. So let's talk about the person you've called or you're calling, and you want to make sure the person coming in is safe. First thing I would do is specifically ask, get them on record, so to speak, of asking, have you done a background check? Does your company do background checks, not just the ownership, but every employee? The reason I say that is because some state regulations are kind of blurry. Most of the time, only the owners are required of the business to have the background check. The state doesn't always require individual employees to have the background checks. So you need to ask, listen, do you do background checks on all of your employees that have potential coming in my home? Here's a second question that often gets them. Are those background checks done annually?
Okay, that's good.
A lot can happen in a year. Oh, you haven't done a background check in 3 years? Really?
So it's not enough to say or to ask, do you do background checks? You need to go further and say on each employee and how have you done it annually?
You. Yes, because if you say, do you do background checks? The owner may say, oh, yes, we do background checks. I did one on myself. I had one on myself. But they're not telling you about the employees. So you ask, do you do background checks on all of your employees, and are they done annually?
Okay, that's good.
That's being proactive, and it's forcing their hand, too, to be proactive. There was actually a case, this happened about a month or so ago. A friend of mine, I was doing a seminar, and a friend of mine was in the audience, and they came up and said, listen to this person's story. And I thought this was remarkably proactive on the part of this company. They called for carpet cleaning. And they said, Jeff, I was so impressed because before the person showed up, the company emailed me and said, here's a picture of the person that we are sending to your home.
Fantastic.
If anyone other than this person shows up at your front door, please call us immediately. I was bowled over. How cool was that for them to take the safety of their clients that seriously, to be that proactive? I thought it was genius on their part. What a great PR marketing campaign. Definitely. To allay the fears of people like yourself calling these people in.
That's a company that I would say, let me have their number.
You don't think they don't get referrals? Bet you they do, especially from women.
Absolutely, because it makes us feel safer.
Right.
Now, the other part of the question,
yes.
What are warning signs that we need to look for if someone shows up and things seem a little bit off?
Yeah, I can tell people, and I do a lot of work with realtors doing open house, showing properties. I said, things aren't always dangerous or violent. Sometimes they're just inappropriate. And some of the inappropriate questions that come up, asking things about you your schedule, your family, the comings and goings. If someone is working on the cable, for instance, they're working on the cable and they say, you know, hey, Sherry, you look like you work out. You know, I just moved to the area recently and I'm trying to find a gym in the area. Would you recommend one? Well, obviously, which one would you recommend? The one that you go to.
Right.
Oh, you know, I've checked them out, and I'm kind of particular. I don't like a lot of people on the floor, you know. Is there a better time to go than another? Well, which time are you going to recommend? The time that
you go.
You go. You see, I mean, they seem like such innocent little questions, but it's when you start adding up all the information that you're divulging, whether they plan to meet you at the gym or plan to know when you're out of your home. Either way. They see pictures of family members. Oh, your daughter, boy, she's just great looking. You know, my daughter goes to school there. Where does your daughter go to school? Well, is that really an appropriate question for a service provider to be asking you on the job? No, it's really not. And yeah, I understand people, Southern hospitality kicks in. You don't want to be rude, but say, you know, I appreciate you asking that, Jeff, but, you know, since I really don't know you, I really don't feel comfortable divulging that information.
Right.
If they take offense to that, I'm sorry, so be it. It was an inappropriate question to begin with.
Absolutely.
So be very careful about what you divulge, both about yourself and about family members, and also the comings and goings of where you can be found or where you can't be found at certain times.
That's really good, because it's very easy for us to lose track or for the Southern hospitality to kick in, and you end up giving all kinds of information just because you're being friendly.
Right.
It's just not safe. We can't do that in the day and age that we live in today. So those are very good tips. I really like the idea of calling up the provider, getting those background checks, making sure and asking those additional questions, and of course not answering people's questions when they're very they seem innocent, because that happens often.
Yeah.
We don't think about it in conversation, especially in the South, where it's just kind of normal for us to all talk about it.
Maybe they saw a picture where they saw the bridge in Sydney or the Opera House in Sydney. Oh, you went to Australia. You went to.
Yes.
Okay, that's different than asking where you're going and when you're leaving and when you're coming back and those kind of bits of information. So things asked in retrospect, as long as it's not history about relationships, I'm not as leery about as things they're forward thinking about future plans of when you're going to be gone or who you're with or where these people are going or where your kids go to school. Those, like I said, that's just giving to me, as teenagers say, TMI, too much information.
Too much information. So I should tell them if they ask about, you know, the gym, well, my husband goes with me and he has a conceal and carry. I'm just kidding. I'm totally joking, people. That was a joke. So,
but I do like the idea of the husband or boyfriend, even if maybe they don't exist.
Just don't leave yourself vulnerable is the point.
Right.
You know, don't give out that kind of information.
Right.
So, all joking aside, just don't do it. If you could give any advice to people watching today about personal safety, and you want them to go away with this, what is it that you want people to know?
Boy, I can't change this message in 25 years. The number one thing, trust your instincts. Don't write it off as simply your imagination when it could be that God-given gift that is the very epitome of discerning the spirits. Listen to that still small voice when that voice is telling you that something or someone just isn't right. It doesn't matter who they are. It doesn't matter how nicely they're dressed. I don't care what car they're driving. I don't care what part of town you're in. In fact, so many times, and it's been a mantra of mine for over 20 years, when people say, oh, I can't believe this happened in our neighborhood. I can't believe this happened at such and such mall or this department store because of the kind of clientele that they cater to. And for over 20 years, I've said the same thing. There are no such thing as safe or unsafe places. There's only safe or unsafe people.
That's good.
Apply that to the home situation you're talking about. Is your home safe? That's not based upon your zip code.
Right.
It's not based upon your homeowner dues. It's based upon who you allow in your home.
Great. Thank you so much, Jeff, and to Defense by Design for what you do, and thank you for coming and talking with us today.
My pleasure, Sherry.
And thank you all for watching Joy in Our Town.